We're here today to talk about Star Trek Adventures, a game that started in 2017 with a basic rule set and the decision to make actually a Klingon version of it. Apparently, there's an upcoming Shackleton book that'll be usable with both Starfleet rulebook and the Klingon rulebook. I'm not the one who was involved in the creation of this system. So let's have the people who did introduce themselves. Go ahead, people.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jim Johnson. I am the project manager for the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game that's published by Modiphius Entertainment. I am the project manager, lead the development of pretty much all the products in the game line, and I've got three of my writers here with me, and I'm going to be happy to have them introduce themselves. So just starting to my left on the screen, let's start with Derek. Why don't you introduce yourself, sir?
Thank you, Jim. I'm Derek Tyler Attico. I'm a winner of the Star Trek Strange New Worlds contest from 2016. I'm happy to be associated with games and Star Trek Adventures for the Klingon Core Rule book and for the upcoming Shackleton book. I'm also happy to be associated with these fine writers and to say that we all worked on this book that we're going to be talking about.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Derek. Let's go to Kelli next.
Hi, I'm Kelli Fitzpatrick, also a winner of the Strange New Worlds contest in 2016, and I am a contributing writer to Star Trek Adventures, and it was a pleasure to be able to work on the Klingon book and the Shackleton book, and lots of cool stuff that Modiphius has going on.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelli. And Scott.
I'm Scott Pearson. I was also in Strange New Worlds so long ago that I can't remember the exact years. And I've written a couple other stories and novellas for the Simon & Schuster fiction line, and I've been the Canon Editor on Star Trek Adventures since the beginning, and I've also contributed some writing here and there, particularly to the Shackleton Expanse.
Yeah, and I'll just close out the loop on the Strange New Worlds. I was Strange New Worlds for 3 years, 2004, 6, and 8, 7, something. I don't know. It was a while ago, but a bunch of them. So we're all Strange New Worlds alumni. This is the book series, not the TV series coming up. That's same name, obviously. But okay. So Jorn, back to you, sir.
The games you say started in 2017. What initiated the idea to come up with a game like this?
Great question. So the Star Trek role-playing game license has been held by a number of different companies over the years. FASA had it a whole bunch of years ago, and then Last Unicorn Games had it in the late 90s, and then they lost the license, or actually they got bought by Wizards of the Coast. And no, is that right? Yeah, no, I think no. They lost the license. Decipher picked up the license, had it for a couple of years, and then Decipher went out of business, and the license, the role-playing game license, went into just nobody grabbed it. So after 14 and 15 years or so, Modiphius picked it up and said, "Hey, we want to do a Star Trek RPG." So they started developing it in 2016, and we released the first products for it, the core rule book, in summer of 2017 at Gen Con. And just have gone on since then. We've got probably 60 or 70 products out, whether they're print or digital, and just have more to come. So we there's always been a Star Trek RPG of one form or another out there, and it was just it was time for a new one for a new generation of Star Trek fans.
This question for each of the other panelists: what actually drew you to this project?
Scott, why don't you start?
Me? Okay. Well, I was contacted. I can't remember if it was Jim who originally contacted me, probably. Way in the beginning, as they were starting to develop the game, I was just brought in since I'm, steeped in the lore of the franchise. And so they invited me to work with Dayton Ward and the other people at Modiphius and coming up with some beginning ideas for sort of the play testing almost that went on beforehand, and then they couldn't get rid of me. I just stayed working with them.
And I came from writing Star Trek fiction, from Strange New Worlds, and heard about Scott and Dayton working on this really cool project, and asked Jim about pitching for the game. Writing Star Trek is a very unique type of writing that I really enjoy, so this was a fantastic opportunity.
Pretty much the same what these guys said. Jim approached me for the Voyager book, and I did the Voyager Worlds book, and then he asked me if I would do the Klingon Worlds, and then if I would participate in the Shackleton. So I've been honored to keep coming back and participating in Star Trek and with Modiphius.
Now, you guys mentioned Dayton Ward. How much of an influence did he have with the four of you working on this?
Yeah, so when I got involved with the game during the development of it, I knew I wanted to get as many of my friends involved as possible because they were all very smart on Star Trek, obviously. So, and I knew a lot of the writers from doing the conventions over the years, being in Strange New Worlds, and I rapidly, once I got settled into working with Modiphius, I wanted to get Scott and Dayton and as many other writers involved as I could. So I gave Dayton's name and Scott's name to the president of Modiphius and said, you got me involved. You need to get these guys involved too because they know Star Trek, or they've been involved in Star Trek longer than I have. So get them into it. And so Dayton and Scott were the two primarily responsible for developing the core of what became the Living campaign, and we hung all the playtest documents off of that, and then just grew it from there. And then I invited Dayton to contribute to the Klingon book as well, and fortunately he had room in his schedule to do so, so I was able to get him involved as well.
Yeah, I would add to that we all know each other, but it's a lot of fun. This is my first time working with Dayton, and it's just a lot of fun, having like a little skull session and figuring out, okay, he's gonna do that, we're gonna do this kind of thing. It's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know.
I should
Dayton
add
knows.
that.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I could have mentioned this in my intro, but I've been the sole freelance copy editor on the Star Trek novel line for about 7 years now. So I just work on Star Trek a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say Dayton does have a vast experience with Trek in that he's written at least 2 guidebooks for the major species. We've had the Klingon Empire guidebook on the CAG podcast in the past with an interview from Dayton on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody here is kind of familiar with D&D, and I say that because D&D keeps changing and we really don't know what's going on anymore with D&D if we learned it from the first books back in the 60s. What are the basic rules for your game system?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So the basic rules are when you are faced with a task, the game master will give you a target number, or actually the game master will give you a difficulty. So if you're trying to accomplish something, there's a certain amount of difficulty from 0 to 5, and what you do is you pick one of your attributes, which is like reason, intellect, fitness. And one of your disciplines, the disciplines are exactly the same as the departments on the show. So you've got command, con, medical, science, security, and engineering. So you pick an attribute, you pick a skill, you add those 2 values together. That gives you your target number, and then you roll 2d20, and you want to roll low. So unlike D&D where you want to roll high, in this game you want to roll low. The lower if you roll below your target number, that equals a success. And if you roll enough successes to beat the difficulty number, you succeeded at the task. There are a lot of ways to assist other characters. So, Star Trek, one of the fundamentals is working together as a team. The characters on the show always work together. so you can assist other people, and you can also buy additional dice. There's a meta currency in the game called momentum that you can use to spend to buy additional dice to succeed at skills or to succeed at tasks. And then from there, you just carry on through the adventure or the scenario or the mission or whatever you're doing, and it's more of a role-playing focus than it is like a tactical type of a combat game. But you could run whole sessions of the game without ever touching the dice, right? Just doing pure role-playing and storytelling with the rest of the players at the table. But the basic mechanic is find out what the difficulty of a task is and roll 2d20. It's pretty simple. There's a lot of nuances once you get into it, but that's the core of it.
Okay, how easy then is it for someone to, pick up this game, just begin to play it?
Mm-hmm. I will ask Kelly or Derek to answer that because they are actually both in my game.
Yeah,
so,
I can vouch.
Go ahead, folks.
I gotta get them in
Star Trek-
somehow.
Star Trek Adventures was my first role-playing game, so I had no experience with D&D or any other game system. This was the first one that I learned and played, and it's incredibly easy, especially for if you're already a Star Trek fan and you already understand sort of the ethos of the universe and Starfleet. It's very easy to just step in and start role-playing. As Jim described, like the basic mechanic is very simple, and you can pull in as many of the rules as you want to, but you don't have to. You really can make it just like you're role playing a TV show, essentially. So I found it was very, very easy access. Derek, what about you?
Yeah, I'd agree exactly what you said, Kelly. I've played D&D and lots of other role playing games, and the beauty of STA is that it doesn't get in the way at all. You can play Star Trek, you can do the theater of the mind, and you can get into what Star Trek is, which is exploring strange new worlds, meeting new cultures, figuring out alien technology. And you only need to go to the rules when you want to, actually. It's not like the rules encumber you or slow you down at all in gameplay or storytelling. And that's what I found really beautiful about it. And writing for the game, I always keep that in mind that, I'm telling a story and the gameplay rules are here as an assist to the players at certain times, but it's not like going to slow them down and they're going to have to stop in the middle of a high pressure moment and turn to page 84 and find out what's going on. It just doesn't happen.
I haven't actually played the game yet, but in reading the rules and going through the books, I think that like a lot of role-playing games, as long as your game master has an overall understanding that the players don't have to spend a lot of time worrying because they're just, saying what they want to do. They're just doing the role-playing.
Absolutely.
So basically what I'm hearing is there's not a lot of unlearning that someone would have to do if they've played other games and are coming to yours.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, a player would be coming in with some Star Trek knowledge, right? But even somebody totally new to the franchise, like if you get a chance to sit them down and watch 1 or 2 episodes before you play the game, give them a sense of what to expect, and then just jump right into it. But like the mechanics themselves, like the game master can ease you into it and just start role playing and just going back and forth with your characters and experiencing events as they happen to you at the table or or online, depending on how you're playing. Yeah, so I mean, even new people even people new to Star Trek can probably get into the game. I mean, the one challenge though is this is a 50-something-year-old franchise, and I know that some new game masters just they have that feeling, that intimidated feeling, like there's so much lore that they feel like they have to learn, and you really don't have to. You can just take a chunk of it and just run with it. Like pick a year that you want to start your game in, and then just go and have fun. Ultimately, right? That's the whole point of the game, is to have fun. But there's enough that even long time Star Trek fans like a lot of us, we can still do plenty with it. But newer people to the franchise too, who might only know like Discovery or Picard, they can get into it as well.
How did you, where'd the idea of a Klingon version come from, and how'd you develop it?
Yeah, so if you've been in the Star Trek RPG circles for long enough, like I've been doing this for 30 odd years, playing the game and just being a huge fan of the game, there's always been this kind of Klingon book curse that's kind of happened to the overall Star Trek RPG franchise, where when a game company would have the license to do the Star Trek RPG, they would announce a Klingon book, and then they would either stop doing the game, or they would lose the license, or they would go out of business or whatever. And that happened to Last Unicorn Games, and it happened to Decipher. Within the space of 10 years, Star Trek RPG fans got 2 different announcements for Klingon books, and they never came to fruition. And so when Modiphius got the license back to their heads in 2016, 2017, there was always that thought of, oh, we should really try to break that curse and do the Klingon book at some point. And just over the course of a few years, as we got comfortable with the game and the production schedule and all that stuff, we just had an opportunity to take advantage of it and do it. And so we started developing it in 2019, I think. I don't even remember now. COVID's been throwing me off, but we started developing it, and then it came out last year. And we were really thrilled to be able to release a dedicated Klingon Core Rule book, because what that does is you can take Star Trek Adventures, and now you can either approach it from a Starfleet point of view or a Klingon point of view, and you don't have to pick. You don't have to buy both core books. You can just pick the one that you want to go with. And it's the same rule set, just very different flavors, obviously, because Klingons approach things very differently than the Federation.
Okay, based on that curse thing you were talking about, have you guys been eliminated from the betting pool of winning going down yet?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
He said based on the tradition of the curse, do we think that Modiphius is going down? I don't think Modiphius is going anywhere, and I think Star Trek Adventures is here to stay.
Yeah.
No,
Sure.
Yeah, Modiphius is doing very, very well as far as I know, and they have a whole bunch of game properties aside from Star Trek that are keeping everybody occupied in the company. But for Star Trek, I know I've got 39 products that I'm working on right now in one form or another, and I've got at least 3 more years of stuff ahead of me that I'm trying not to think about right now because of everything that's right in front of me. But yeah, Star Trek, Modiphius' Star Trek Adventures will be here for quite some time. So as far as the curse goes, I mean, knock on wood, right? I guess we broke it, but yeah, I'll leave that up to the fans to decide ultimately. You're the ones who are going to be looking at the book and deciding whether it's worthwhile or not.
39 different projects. How many versions of Star Trek Adventures or things you're working are there?
Well, there's really just the 2. There's the Starfleet Core Rule book, which is kind of like the Starfleet focused, Starfleet Federation focused, and then there's the Klingon Core Rule book. But I've got a lot of different products in the works, whether it's standalone adventures like adventure modules, character packs, the Shackleton Expanse rule, the Shackleton Expanse campaign setting that we're working on, that we all worked on, and we're working on now. Plus a bunch of other stuff that hasn't been announced yet. So just a lot of different source books that add on to the game. I mean, none of them are required, obviously, but there's so much material in the franchise, right, for 50 years worth of material, and we've got new series to work on. So, we have the license to do material for Discovery and for Picard. And so we've got those in the development, the development hopper as well. So plenty of stuff to work on, that's for sure.
Anybody thinking about a lower decks version?
If we can get the license to lower decks, absolutely. We won't do if we got the license to lower decks, we would not do like a core rule book for lower decks. We would do a supplement because what we don't want to do is we don't want to do core book after core book after core book and further split up the fan base. I mean, Star Trek role playing is kind of a niche within a niche, and we don't want to break it up any further than we have to. So we have a few different core products that are access points into the game, whether it's a free quick start or a starter box set or the core books themselves. And we want to kind of manage that, because we don't want fans to think, oh, I have to go buy 10 different core rule books before I can even play the game, and then I need the lower decks book and everything else. So we'll try to keep it easy on everybody's pocketbook as much as we can.
What does somebody need to go ahead and get started?
Great question. I mean, like I said, there are two different quick start PDFs available. There's a Starfleet quick start and a Klingon quick start. So if you want to just give it a try as a Klingon, grab the free Klingon quick start off the website, or go with the Federation version. So those are free products. They'll give you a taste of the game. It gives you all the key rules that you need, plus a free adventure, and also pre-generated characters. Right, so you can play the characters right out of the quick start. You don't have to create your own character or anything. You can just play with what you got in the quick start. There's also a box set. There's a starter box set. I think it's like, I don't know, $20 or $25 or something, and that includes dice, character sheets, an adventure, a rule book, an abbreviated rule book, and pretty much everything you need. It's pretty much a game in a box. It harkens back to the old D&D starter boxes, where pretty much everything you needed was in the box. And if you wanted to go to the full game experience after that point, then you can buy the whichever core rule book you want, and then you would go from there. But I mean, really, in answer to your question, all you really need is a game master who has a copy of the core rule book. I think that's really all you need, and then the players can just bring their imaginations. And when you all get together for that first session, you go through the character creation life path, and then you've got your characters and you're good to go. I mean, even now with with the COVID and people still playing online more than in person in a lot of cases, there are resources online that you can use. Like there's the dice roller apps and a character creation app and some other stuff. So you almost don't even need paper or dice, right? I mean, you can buy dice if you want to. We have Star Trek Adventures dice that you can get if you want, and there's plenty of supplements that are available. But we've been careful not to make any of the supplements required. Right? They're all nice to have, and are nice to have, but it's really up to the game or the individual players and game master, what they want to buy into.
And like a lot of role-playing games, you can decide whether or not you want to get into miniatures and have full sets and all that sort of stuff. But you don't need that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all you really need is all up here. Really.
Mm-hmm.
But Modiphius does produce some beautifully detailed miniatures. If you
And
go
some
down
really
that
cool
path.
dice.
And some really cool
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, and so accessories, we've got dice, we've got miniatures, we've got game master screens, that kind of stuff that is always useful to have. Certainly not required, but the miniatures are also nice to have, just because I know a lot of gamers, especially myself, like to have miniatures on the table just to kind of look at it and make use of. The game itself doesn't require miniatures, though. It's not like D&D where you need a tactical battle map to play the combat scenarios. It's more abstract than that, but you can certainly play it more tactically if you wanted to. We do have optional rules built into the game that you could go more tactical with your combat if you wanted to, but it's not required. Like Derek said, though, as long as you're using the theater of the mind, that's the big piece, and I think that ties in really well with just how Star Trek storytelling kind of plays out.
Okay, have we supplied a link to this website anywhere within CADCon?
I don't know.
To Modiphius' website, you mean?
Yeah. Christine, have we done that?
Yeah, if not, you can just go to www.modiphius.net, or you can go to modiphius.com. Is it on? It's on Twitch. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it was posted on Twitch, and I think somebody posted it in a channel around here somewhere.
Because that'd be good to have if you need to go there and download anything.
We'll
Hey,
make sure
what,
I check it out.
what's this Shackleton book you've mentioned a couple times?
Mm-hmm. Actually, Scott, why don't you talk a little bit about the Living campaign, and then we'll jump in and on to the Shackleton book.
Sure. In the beginning, before the game even came out, one of the things that I started working on with Dayton and Jim and the people at Modiphius
More than 7 days, right?
was we wanted to come up with a little bit of a we wanted to come up with a storyline for beginners to play, and we wanted something new, not something that was taken directly from any of the franchises. And so we just pushed out beyond space that had been explored by the Federation or the Klingon Empire, and we ended up calling this previously unexplored space the Shackleton Expanse. And then we started creating various artifacts and species and sort of a mystery about things that were going on out there. And that created something for playtesters and early players before the game came out to start trying out playing with this new game. And then, and we put a lot of work into that and created a bunch of cool stuff. And so it was very exciting. And then flash forward a few years after the game's been out and people have been loving it, we decided, I say we like I had any part in the decision, but Modiphius and Jim decided that we should return to the Shackleton Expanse and really flesh it out and make it into a full source book. And so it was fun to go back and work on that, and all of us on this panel contributed chapters and species and stuff to the new book, and I gained a whole new appreciation for people that write role-playing games, because it was the hardest thing I've ever written.
I'm curious, Scott, what do you felt made it so hard?
Well, as a regular prose writer, I'm used to writing a story, and as the author, I know the beginning, the middle, the end, and I have absolute control over every plot point from A to Z. And obviously, when you're writing a scenario for a role-playing game, you have to leave in lots of spaces for the players to find their own way, and they might go in a completely different way than you would imagine. And so trying to come up with a way to sort of come up with variables and sort of non-linear things so that you can create a coherent storyline, but allow room for the game master and the player characters to explore within there. It's so counterintuitive to regular fiction writing that it took me quite a while to wrap my brain around it.
Why did you call it Shackleton?
Well, that was a reference to the explorer Shackleton.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
The doomed expedition.
Yeah.
So, just to add a little color to Scott's comments, the Living campaign was a series of adventures that told the beginning of this epic story in 2 tracks. There was an original series track and a Next Generation era track, and each of those, I think there was like 9 or 10 episodes in each track. And all this stuff is available for free on Modiphius' website, the Living campaign. We made an effort to we released installments on a semi-regular basis for fans to enjoy, just to play the game. And so the first, season's worth of content for the original series and for the next gen are available on the website, so you can check that out anytime you want. And then in early 2019, we took a break because we realized that we had bitten off way more than we could chew. And just between the production schedule and the approval schedule and just everything else that was happening with the company and just like developing new products, we just could not keep up with the schedule that we wanted to set. So we kind of put the living campaign on hold for a while until we could kind of figure out what we wanted to do with it. And so we knew we had finished season 1 on a really kind of cool, epic place for both the original series and the next gen series. And then we decided, like Scott said, to come back to it and reimagine it. Instead of doing installments online, we decided to make it an actual product. And we played with some ideas about maybe doing it like a box set, like the old classic D&D campaign settings, like Forgotten Realms and Greyhawk and Dark Sun, where you'd actually get a box of everything. But instead, we decided to go with a book. So we've got a really big book coming out in the next few months that contains a full-blown 10-part epic campaign all about the alien species that Dayton and Scott created. And we all contributed adventures to that. We adapted all the existing living campaign stuff and dropped it into the book. And then also just added a huge amount of content for the Shackleton Expanse, the Beta Quadrant region around the Expanse, and just really tried to build it out like a toolkit that a game master could just take and just run, years and years and years of stories with their groups. Like I remember back in the day when I got Forgotten Realms, that gray box, the old gray box, like that did me for 3 or 4 years with my gaming group, because like that was all we needed. We had the player handbook, the GM handbook, the monster manual, and the Forgotten Realms book, and we were golden for years. And I kind of wanted to do that same thing for Star Trek with the Shackleton book. So hopefully there's enough content in there for everybody to enjoy. And I want to make sure that Derek and Kelli both have an opportunity to answer the same question I asked Scott, approaching the storytelling, because both of you contributed adventures to the Shackleton book. So I'm just curious, because you're also both long-term fiction writers. How was the experience writing the adventure for the book different than writing fiction?
So there's no protagonist in as Scott said, not just that you don't know every plot detail, but you don't know who the main characters are because they're the player characters. And so you have to write a story in which any character that a player could envision would work as one of the agents in the story. So that was one of the biggest shifts from fiction writing specifically. And there's also this idea that the source material and the adventures in books are more like tools for a game master rather than set pieces of prose that have all of the same craft elements that you would expect to see in a piece of fiction. And so Derek sometimes had to remind me when we were working together, I sometimes wanted to lapse into, prose writing, and it's a very different style of writing, and yet it's still story. Like there's still conflict, there's still turning points, there's still tension, and so all of those points are still the same. And at least for me, it felt very similar to crafting an arc of a Star Trek narrative. So very similar to the process that I went through to write my Strange New World story, in coming up with, what's the problem, where's the hook that these characters can engage with in a way that evokes the Star Trek universe that we're familiar with, but then also something strange and alien and interesting because we're in the Shackleton Expanse and there's lots of new things here to explore.
Yeah, I exactly. I mean, I thought about it a lot. This is my first time writing for a role-playing game, and I thought about it a lot like paving a road. So when you pave a road, this is what you're telling the players or the person that's driving on the road. This is the way they should go. But then, they might have a ATV and go off-road, right? But but that road is there for them. And so me as the writer and the storyteller is paving that road for them to kind of give them that guidance. And so I'm fully expecting them to go off-road and then come back on. But that road always has to be there, kind of like literary guide rails in a sense, for them to help them along the way on this journey that I hope that they enjoy. But it has to be open-ended enough that they're like, I don't like what that Attico guy did in this part. I'm going to do this. But I like that other part that Attico guy did, so I'm gonna come back and do that part. And you gotta always keep that in mind and make it really open ended for them, so that hopefully they have an enjoyable experience.
That's a really good point, Derek, that these books are set up in a way that allows GMs to really just lift whatever elements they want from any given piece and then bring their own ideas to it.
Yeah. We're playing salad bar. Take what you want.
As a writer, how tough is it to set up a scenario where the reader basically can go whatever direction they want, and you don't control the flow of the narrative?
That's the trick, right?
That is yeah. That's the challenge.
Well, how'd you handle it?
When I was invited to work on it, I took it on because it was a challenge, because I like challenging myself as a writer and working in different formats or different genres. And so I was really excited to have the chance to try it out. But like I said earlier, it took me a long time to wrap my head around it. I would start writing something and I would realize that I was just writing every single thing out, and there wasn't any room for choices to be made. And so you kind of have to. The way I thought about it was I started thinking about it more as an outline. That you're not filling in every detail. You're just kind of putting in major points along the way. And so that you can still kind of help guide the GM and the players through these sort of bullet points of your story, but it leaves lots of room in there for embellishment, either by the game master or by the choices of the player characters. And so in some ways, when you're writing regular fiction, you're always trying to add detail, but when you write for this sort of thing, it's like you're taking details out to give room for the players to fill in their own details.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would say one of the important things for me to keep in mind when I'm writing RPG content is that I would say, as the writer, I'm not directing the story. The game master is directing their story that they're choosing to tell based on the tools that I give them in the piece of writing. So I have to make sure that there's enough material there that they can take that and use it. And one way that sort of plays out on the page, so to speak, is trying to make sure that let's say there's a certain task that the players have to overcome, or they have to science their way out of it or whatever. It's helpful for me to say, here are some potential solutions that will work. If the players try this, they can do this and get this outcome. This won't work because X, and give lots of some different possibilities to provide for however the players might go about trying to attempt that specific task in the game, and then it's the game master's job to figure out how they want to actually navigate that.
Yeah. Absolutely, options.
Yeah, and I would add that I relied a lot on Jim's expertise and experience. I could always get in touch with him when I just felt totally in the weeds.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Scott, because in our correspondence to set up the ideas for this panel, you mentioned that you were the Canon editor.
Yes.
What is a Canon editor? What do you do if you're not the guy that says, hey, that's not canon? You can't do that.
I basically all the gaming material that of Star Trek Adventures that references anything in the various episodes and movies. I'm reading through all that and just making sure that we don't break any continuity. That's part of, and anything that gets a fiction license from CBS to work with Star Trek, you can't contradict things that happened in the original material. And so I just go through and read things with an eye toward those sorts of details. If there's a reference to a certain race using a certain weapon, I make sure it's the right weapon. If there's anytime there's a quote, the various chapters and sections in the books usually open with a quote from a character from the canon. And so I'm always going back to that episode of the movie and watching that scene to make sure the quote is word for word correct. And so I just give notes throughout any manuscript whenever there's something that I think might be a little questionable, a little close to breaking continuity, or of course there's plenty of continuity errors that exist within the canon. And so when you
Boy,
get into
howdy.
those tricky areas, I'll just kind of give my I just kind of give my 2 cents there, my little advice for the writer and editors to decide how they want to approach it to make sure that we don't make anyone at CBS mad at us.
Yeah, so Scott, I'm grateful that Scott's on the team because like when I get manuscripts from the writers, I can catch probably, I don't know, 85 to 90% of everything, just canon wise, because I know Star Trek pretty well. Scott knows it way better than me, which I'm grateful for. And Scott also knows the novels way better than me because I think, Scott, you probably read everything, and you're also the primary copy editor on all the current stuff. And so it's great because I love to drop in Easter eggs into the manuscripts that reference comic books and reference novels and reference other things that are Star Trek that the fans will pick up on and appreciate. And of course, CBS appreciates it because they own everything anyway, right? So it's okay to reference it. But like sometimes I'll look at a manuscript and I'll say, I really need a novel reference here about something that happened in the Beta Quadrant in a certain year. And I can go to Scott and say, hey, do we have anything in any of the novels that even remotely resemble this? And he'll come back with like 5 or 6 options, which is great, right? Because then he gives me the chapter detailed notices, and it's like, oh, I'll just use that one and just drop it into the manuscript. And then the fans read it and go, oh, hey, look, they put in a reference to Articles of the Federation. That was really cool. And then we can pat ourselves on the back and look clever, right? But it's all for fan service ultimately. But I'm really grateful that Scott can bring that level to not just double check me, but also just to add that extra layer of Star Trek, clarity on it. So thank you, Scott. I never say thank you enough. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and you're welcome. It is so much of what I do because when I copy edit the novels, obviously the novels often have lots of references back to other things that have occurred in the novels and in the series, and so I'm always doing just a ridiculous amount of looking up of little tiny details across all the novels and the various filmed aspects.
Scott, as co-host of the Bound by Honor CAG podcast, I know how frickin' many Star Trek books there are out there. And if you've read them, kudos, man. You've done a lot of work.
Well, I've read all the novels. I haven't read all the other works beyond the novels because that really gets crazy. But if you look closely at the shelves behind me, that's about 1/8 of my Star Trek collection.
Yikes.
That makes your Star Trek collection as big as my entire science fiction collection. Kelli, when we were discussing, am I getting feedback from somebody? Probably me.
Yeah.
When we were corresponding, you talked about sidebars, and you're introducing sidebars to the story. What are sidebars? Why are they there? And why are they important to a gaming system?
So, sidebars are little pieces of in-world fiction or ephemera that are designed to be used by the game master or just as enjoyable reading for the readers of the books to sort of give additional perspectives to Star Trek events and periods that, as fans, we may be very familiar with, but the sidebars allow us a different perspective. So, for example, one of the sidebars that Jim asked me to write was on the subject of retaking Deep Space Nine, which the Klingon fleet helps do. And so, in DS9, the show, we get the main perspective, from Cisco and from the people kind of calling the shots. And I wrote a sidebar from the perspective of Lescott, who's the on the Rotaran. So it just allows like a different viewpoint into the scene, and it lets us as writers kind of flesh out little pieces of the events and the timeline that maybe we haven't got a chance to see yet. But as a game master, you can pull on those and use them, as correspondences or as events in your game. So they're really fun to write. They're really short, and they're called sidebars because they're usually on the side of the page along the main content. They just kind of are meant to enhance the experience.
Follow-up question then. Was Liscott in the TV series, or did you pick that up from Keith DeCantio's books?
He was in the series, but I think only one episode. And so I just kind of tried to find somebody who we don't necessarily get their POV. There's several main characters in the show that we get Worf's perspective all the time, and everybody loves Worf. But being able to see from a different character's perspective is kind of cool.
I think Scott can agree with me here. We get Lescott's POV quite a bit from Keith's books.
Yeah, whenever you start writing Klingon stuff, you feel like you're competing with DeCandido.
Yeah, that's fair. Keith knows his Klingons, that's for sure.
Yeah, we wish you would keep putting books out, though. We're running out of books to review. At this point, I'd like to open this up for questions from our audience here. So has anybody got a question they'd like to ask the panels about Star Trek Adventures?
I'm burning with a question.
I have one. Because I've played and collected all the games from the past. How easy is it? Okay, two questions. How easy is it to convert like characters or aliens from like Fasa or Last Unicorn into Modiphius? And how easy is it to model a character on yourself?
The second question broke up. Could you repeat it?
How easy is it to model a character on oneself?
To model a character on yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first question, what's interesting is I'm on social media for the game all the time on a bunch of different groups, and I don't think I've actually seen anybody try to do a conversion sheet for FASA to 2D20 or the other systems to 2D20. I think it would take a little bit of work because the Modiphius system is pretty simple. Like in terms of characters, you got 6 attributes and 6 skills. And like I know that the Decipher game and the Last Unicorn game both had a lot of skills, right? There's a huge list of skills in both of those games. You could probably convert a lot of those skills to the focuses in our game. So I'm confident that the conversion would not be difficult, right? Because like it's pretty straight. I mean, the just characters are pretty straightforward. But like in terms of the numbers and stuff, you'd probably have to spend a little bit of time with it. But that's actually a great question. I think I'll have to bug some of the fan sites that are out there and see if they can do some conversion work for the older game systems into the newer game system. That being said, though, creating a character for this system is pretty easy. You just go through the life path and you pick. It's kind of like Last Unicorn games if you're familiar, if you remember that one. where you kind of go step by step. Early life, career, and then career events, etc. And you add mechanical elements to it as you go. And then modeling the character after yourself. I think that was your second question. I would just go through the life path and just pick elements that are appropriate that fit that fit you and bring you into the game. That's probably what I would do. I would ask Kelly and Derek, since you created characters for the game, any other perspectives?
I found it incredibly easy. It's really easy to create. It's also really easy to tweak after the fact, which I really appreciate because I think sometimes when you're creating a character in any role-playing game, we've all experienced that moment where we're like, okay, I created this character and I had this in mind, but now I'm looking at the stats. I need to make some tweaks, and Modiphius is the system for STA is very forgiving and allows you to round out the character on the back end, not only the front end. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. And the life path system in STA really encourages you to think about your character's entire life story. So it isn't just about setting numbers and stats, but it's really about the why. Like, why do they have this high stat in engineering or whatever it is? And you get to pick life events. And I really enjoyed it going through that process. It took us like an evening to do that. It took a couple of hours to really sort of think it out, and it was really enjoyable, and it resulted in a character that I've been playing for over a year now, and like Derek said, there's so much room for growth and adjustment, and when you come up with focuses for your character and values and things that really matter to them, it makes them feel like real people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, because there's some
I
really
have
great.
a-
right there.
Oh, I was going to
Go
say,
ahead.
I have a question for you guys, you wonderful people. My question would be, you know how with some of the supplements of this game are that are canon character sheets. Can we expect, I don't know, maybe some of the really notable Klingons like Gowron, Martok, maybe even like Korkang and Koloth, like in their original series versions and their DS9 versions? Like, is there any plans going forward to make those character sheets for some really important Klingons in lore?
So Korkang and Koloth are all in the Klingon Core Rule book. They're not laid out like you would see in the PDF packs for a character. We didn't go that route, but we did include the full statistics in the Klingon Core Rule book for those three. So you could probably just either cut and paste them or just make a copy of that sheet and then you're good to go. Let's see, Martok is in one of the supplements. I think he's in either the Alpha Quadrant book or the Gamma Quadrant book. And I don't remember the other one you asked about, but yeah, I think most of the, especially the Klingon Core Rule book, has just a ton of NPCs or Klingon characters in there that you could make use of just directly if you want to play Kalar or Martok or Core or Koloth or oh gosh, Mara. But we put a lot of. I crammed as many characters as I possibly could in there before I ran out of page count. But hopefully there's enough in there. There are more character sheets in like the quick start adventure that's out there now. That's for free. There's a bunch of pre-generated characters in there that you can use. I'm not sure we'll ever do a product that actually takes them again and just turns them into that sheet that you can do as a character. But I'll add it to the list. My list is ever growing, so I will certainly add it to the list and see if I can fit it into the production
Has there
queue
ever
somewhere.
been any thought of doing a supplement or something for the time of Kalis, so we can play Klingons during that time, big bloody battles and things?
I think you could do that right now with the rule set as it stands. Keith added a lot of great Keith DeCanado added a lot of great content to the Klingon Core Rule book about that early age. And Scott, I'll rely on you. I don't know that we know a lot canonically about that time period. So I think the fans could just take the rule set as it stands and just go crazy with it. I think I would love to hear somebody doing an Age of Kalis game. That would be awesome.
Yeah, most of the references to that in the series are pretty, they're things that Worf has said and some of the other major Klingon characters throughout Deep Space Nine, particularly, and it's been fleshed out a lot more in prose by Keith primarily. And I think it would be pretty easy for someone to just, get a little help by looking at those prose releases and then just using the rule book, the Klingon rule book, and spinning out their own stories.
Technology and stuff that's available. That's kind
Right.
of more my thing. Is I'm wondering like how much tech did they have? Didn't they have back then? We don't really know, so it would be interesting to kind of get a consent.
Yep.
Any other questions? Because if not, I've got a hardball question for each one of you guys. And we're going to start with you, Derek.
Okay.
Who's your favorite Klingon character?
Oh my God, man. Um. Uh. Well, I know a lot of people probably say Worf, but it's not Worf. The longer I deal with Worf and look at Worf, I don't think he's like the best Klingon. I have some sympathy for his brother. I do like Martok a lot. Speaking of sidebars, I wrote a sidebar about Martok, and he talks to a graduating academy class, and I really feel for that character. I really identify with that character. He's not royalty, and he's just a regular guy. Greatness was thrust upon him. So I think I would probably choose Martok.
And good, you explained it. Hey, Kelly, who's yours?
Ambassador Kalar. She is confident and competent and just sharp. I just love everything about that character except for the way they killed her off. I just love the way she handles herself and Worf. And I think she's a really great representative of maybe a different side of Klingonness. I mean, she's a diplomat, and I like seeing that in her character.
And definitely someone you'd like to take out. Well, maybe not you, but I'd like to take out to dinner. Continuing on, same question. Jim, is it?
Is it for me or Jim?
Sure, I'll take. I wasn't sure if it was going to be me or Scott.
Scott's on the end of my screen.
Derek took Martok. What's that?
Scott's on the end of my screen. If you want to grab Martok, give us some new reasons why he's your favorite character.
No, I don't want to be repetitive. I think, gosh, there's so many great characters, right? But then I have to think about, like, are they really the quintessential Klingon? Like, Lorsa and B'Etor are really cool, but ultimately they're traitors. And then you got some other ones. I think I have to really think about. I have to think about Grilka, right? Because she was willing to do something different and get involved with Quark, and reach out to a nasty, yucky Ferengi for help, right? And it worked out for her house ultimately, right? And I think that was just really interesting and different because it wasn't the typical kind of Klingon approach to things. It was like, okay, she needed to be creative and kind of think outside the Klingon box a little bit and do something a little bit different. And I think I just really appreciated that because she was clearly a strong, capable character who was looking for like the next edge, right? And of course, I would like to think that any Klingon's looking for what next tactical advantage can I use to succeed. And I think aligning herself with Quark to get what she needed, right, was it. So I think I really dig on Grilka. I think she was a really fun character, and I wish we could have seen more of her. But Scott, what's your approach? What's your
Well,
thoughts?
I want to open this up a little bit. Scott,
Okay.
you've got the
I'm,
option of going with the books too.
Well, I'm going to cheat a little. Instead of narrowing it down to one, I'm going to just say the 3 original Klingon Core Koloth. They had such an impact in the original series, and of course that was before the Klingon race had really been fleshed out in any substantive way. And then when Deep Space Nine was able to bring the 3 of them back, and then you got to see those original actors kind of in a way reinventing those characters in the new way that Klingons are portrayed, but still being true to their original performances. I just really loved seeing those guys, and I have had fun writing those characters, both for little bits in the game, and also they featured in one of my Star Trek novellas that I wrote. And so I'm gonna pick the original 3.
I appreciate your writing in on Koloth because he is my character's father in our campaign.
Very cool.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank all of our panel guests here today. I think they did a wonderful job of explaining this system that actually is being used here on Discord. And I hope the rest of you enjoyed the experience also. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
us.
I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you for having us. Yeah, a lot of fun.
And thank you, Jorn. And yes, definitely. Thank you, everyone. That was loved it. Just absolutely loved it.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great rest of your convention.
Enjoy playing STA.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, SPA.